Hello fellow cinephiles, 90s Film Guru here. Thanks for joining me today. Today I'll be looking at Entrapment. This came out in 1999 and starred Sean Connery, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Will Patton, Ving Rhames and a variety of others. The film follows the story of insurance investigator Virginia Baker, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, deems that the thief Robert McDougall had robbed a Rembrandt painting. To retrieve the painting, she poses as an art thief, cooperating with him in criminal acts. John M.L. directed. It really was made for $66 million, went on to make $214.4 million. So it was a very successful film. I do remember when this film came out, I saw it at the cinema, and I really kind of thought it was a really engaging and fun and entertaining film. It's a type of films they don't quite make anymore. And the cast is brilliant. Sean Connery is great as this post-Bond older man who still has some charm and suaveness even in his 60s. And he's really good in this as Mac. I think he has fun with the role. It's a role he really wants to do. He gets to use his own accent, which is cool. He gets to have a castle in the movie, which I'm sure he loved. It's all part of who he is as an actor, and he just has real gravity and real presence on screen. And even in an old age, he still had that seductiveness. And this movie is kind of sexy in many ways. And I kind of like that. It sort of harks back to the type of movies we used to get that we don't quite get anymore due to the way that audiences are these days. The film was written by Ronald Bass, and it's focused on the new millennium. So 1999 leading into 2000, everybody's fear around that. And they really used that in an inventive way, and I really like what they do, especially the heist towards the end of the movie. Sort of interesting. Simon West and Anton Fuqua were both sort of considered to direct the film before Amel was given the job. And Simon West is always known for sort of actiony things like Con Air and movies like that. And he has a sort of Michael Bay-esque quality to him, and I think he could have handled the action stuff quite well. But the dramatic stuff, I'm not 100% sure if he would have been the right choice. And Anton Fuqua, well, I'm a big fan of his, but I don't think he did a lot at the point this film would have came out. And it just, his style and the way he makes films probably mightn't have worked as well. Some critics didn't like it, and some critics really praised it. To me, it's one of the most solid 90s heist action movies that I've seen. I really am impressed with it. To return to it now after not seeing it for some time had a different impact on me in the performances, the way the suspense was done, the action, the heist elements, and just the overall sort of slight twisty Mission Impossible-esque storyline that it has. Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars. And he said it works because it is made stylishly. The plot is put together like a Swiss watch that keeps changing time zone. It is accurate and misleading at once. The film consists of one elaborate caper sequence after another, and rivals the Bond films in its cinematic action sequences. Most of the movie's actions is just that, action and not extreme violence. And he also noted that Catherine Zeta-Jones, and this is what he said: "I can only reflect, as I did not watch her in The Mask of Zorro, that while beautiful women are a dime a dozen in the movies, those with fire, flash and humour are a good deal more scarce." I don't know if that's a good or bad thing to say about her, but I'm a big fan of hers. I think Mask of Zorro was really great. She was really good in it. And I think she's really great in this. And I think she has a lot more to do. I do agree that it rivals the Bond films in a lot of ways. And it could have really been a Bond movie with Sean Connery returning as James Bond, a much older Bond, who's sort of retired but gets brought back into the life. But I kind of like that it sort of didn't do that. And but it did sort of feel like a Bond. Capers were like the missions that Bond goes on. You have Catherine Zeta-Jones, who's kind of like a Bond girl, but she's much more capable and does a lot more in the movie than just being the Bond girl. And it sort of has these sort of mysterious and odd villains. And there's other elements happening too with Ving Rhames and Will Patton's characters. And I kind of like that. But it does feel like it could slip into the Bond universe, and that this could have been Sean Connery as a much older Bond. What I like most about Sean Connery's character Mac is that he's just in control of things. He knows things are going to go sideways, and he always has a backup plan, and then he has a backup plan on the backup plan. Because, like he says, you never know what's going to happen. Where Catherine Zeta-Jones's character gets mixed up in it too much. She starts to blur the lines between whether she's really part of the FBI, bureau trying to track down him and catch him with his hand in the cookie jar, so to speak, or whether she actually is a criminal like him. And it sort of blurs the lines as the film goes on. And the third act has a really great sequence, an action sequence. Well, to tell you the truth, the whole film has moments like that with particular heists. I love the opening heist, which is really great. Someone descending, all dressed in black. They open a window, slide it out, get in, steal a painting. All of that stuff is really, really cool and well done and very clever. And there are gadgets that are used in this movie that, one, feel like something Bond could have used, but also they feel still modern. They're not sort of dated in any aspect. The only thing that dates movies are obviously the computers. And the big computer at the end is kind of interesting and taken difference on that I liked, but it's also the desk computers that a lot of the characters used in the film are very dated. As something I've discussed with a friend of mine, Sean Connery had two types of looks that he had through his career. First, with Bond and all of that, he's suave, clean shaven, and there's a lot of movies where he's like that. But when he goes grey and has the hairpiece and the grey beard, he shifts into like a statesman or a gentleman in a lot of ways. And his performances are still really great, they're just different. He really plays on the aspect that he's getting older, but he doesn't let that hinder or stop him. And he just was able to really bring gravity to so many movies and so many roles, and this is definitely one of them. And I like the chemistry he has with Catherine Zeta-Jones. Not hard, I don't think, for actors have a chemistry with Catherine Zeta-Jones, to tell you the truth. Ving Rhames is fine in it. Like, all the side characters, Will Patton, are really good. They're solid actors. They're not magnificent, but they're solid and they suit it. And all I could think of with Ving Rhames being in it is, even though he has a different name, I just kept thinking of him as Luther from Mission Impossible. Because he had the same look, I guess, from the first Mission Impossible. And you just felt like this was a Mission Impossible Bond-esque movie, so it kind of made sense. It was like he was pretending to be this person to become part of this particular world, which I really thought was interesting. So there's a lot of vibes and a lot of flavours and concepts that were taken for other things and injected into this. It keeps your attention all the way through. It's a very engaging movie. There is dramatic elements and dramatic moments for the particular characters, which was good. That sort of makes them more human than in control all the time. Mac's always in control, but things start to blur in this particular movie. And I really like the train sequence at the end of what's transpired and who Mac really is and what's really going on. All of that stuff is really, really cool as well. The third act, the final heist, that is the biggest set piece of the whole film. Just about how they go about doing it and things go wrong and then what they have to do to survive and how it gets bigger and the action gets bigger and it's just really well handled and it's really engaging. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of Thomas Crown Affair in a lot of ways too, with the Mac character being similar to the Steve McQueen or Pierce Brosnan character that they played in those movies. It just feels like that, probably more like Pierce Brosnan, which is kind of interesting because he was a Bond as well, so there's a whole sort of tie for me with those particular two films and why they feel similar. The music's good, and I like that we go to different places, how each place is different and looks different and feels different, and there's different characters there that are good and bad, and just how everything gets swept up. And it's the first time, like, obviously Mac has worked with a few people before, but it's the first time with her where he starts to let his guard down, where he starts to care about Virginia and doesn't want anything to happen to her. And he sort of feels responsible for her in that. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it really is how she starts to affect him and how there is a strong bond between the two. That, yes, there is a romance element to it, but it's much more than that. It's kind of an understanding respect for each other. There are sequences in it, I'm sure, that today mightn't fly, where he appears in her room and she's sitting in bed topless. We don't see her topless, obviously, but it's implied. That probably wouldn't fly today, but I kind of like that. There is just, he's one step ahead of everybody, and where he appears in her room and where he's talking to her. I really like that, and the way it's shot, and he's sitting there in the dark and all the lights on her, and just the things he starts to do are really cool, and he just has a cool vibe and presence about him, which I really loved. What this film did in the end was cement this really great, actiony, dramatic icon in Sean Connery, that he's still capable and still can carry a movie and still is charming and sexy and everything that he has always been in the movie. And it also showed Catherine Zeta-Jones, one to really watch out for, her who hasn't had the hugest career, but she's been in some really great films, and this was a great beginning with this and The Mask of Zorro. And I think she really handles all of it really well. She's a solid actress, and I like how she goes up against Sean Connery and is able to stand her ground with this really talented and great old school actor. In the end, this is a very solid film that's well done and looks at particular things and feels a lot like a Bond and Mission Impossible film, and could probably be slipped into either or those two when rewatching those particular movies. It has some great action sequences, set pieces, the directing's really good. It's just an overall entertaining, fun, old school sort of action movie that we used to get a lot in the 90s that we don't get a lot these days, and it just feels different. That film just feels different to what we get in this sort of genre these days. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe down the bottom, follow my letterbox and Facebook. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.